Nathan Cenovski, I am coming from Autodesk with the XR department from Autodesk, and here to talk to you a little bit about the Wild and Prospect, the two current VR-based design review tools that we have available. So as a little bit of as background goes, myself, here's a little slide on me, basic info. I was previous to this, I was a member of the Wild as an independent startup. The Wild had also purchased Prospect back in 2021. And so we were working with both products. They're kind of wholly disparate products that solve generally the need for VR-based design review in a collaborative sense. And there's a bit of a Venn diagram where they overlap, and then there's strengths and weaknesses with each one, where depending on your use case, one might be better than the other. Was working there, and then about a year ago, a little over a year, Autodesk came by and acquired the Wild, and in the process also picked up Prospect. So currently we, the entire team got moved over into the Autodesk ecosystem, and we're kind of maintaining the scrappy startup mentality while also having the massive resources and brain power of Autodesk to help us to kind of bring about the next generation of VR and AR tools for the future as well. So if we're ready to dive in, Dana.
Please do, Nathan. We'd
All right,
love to have
go
you.
right ahead. All right, so just want to give like a basic overview of what we're trying to do. Jason's presentation on Enscape, and also probably what you'll see a little bit with Twinmotion as well. Great tools, beautiful tools that have the amazing visual graphics that we don't really, to be completely frank with, we don't have the visual graphics like that. We're kind of fitting a different need, a different use case for this. What we're trying to do is bring people in through earlier stages in the design process, making it so that they can convert their models from Revit, Navisworks, and other tools into a collaborative VR session for review as they go through the process. So we want to take these 3D designs from a 2D screen and present them into an immersive format. This helps to accomplish a lot of the simple goals of resolving issues that come up in the design review process, such as looking at a 3D design on a 2D screen and the mistranslations and errors that can come from something like that. So generally speaking with VR, of course, we're all VR fans, and we want to convey the feel for the project first and foremost. Get someone into their design at a one-to-one scale so that they can see the perspective, a different perspective in a way that makes it so that errors and issues just smack you right in the face. There are things that can hide on a 2D screen that are not going to be able to hide in a 3D, in an immersive 3D environment. So we use this for a lot of different aspects, such as the design review, coordination of different teams, the ideation also for early stages of the design review process, and also coordinating with other teams so that we can get in a fully federated model and make sure the various systems aren't conflicting with each other. And that just gets a lot easier when you're in an immersive environment and everybody's on the same page. So I'd like to start off, we'll kind of look at each one of the tools that we have here briefly. Prospect is one of the first tools I want to go over. And so Prospect of our two tools is kind of like the workhorse. It tends to be less frills, less, you can really less ability to do an open-ended world, and it's very constrained and targeted on what it wants to accomplish. But that constraint lends to an elegance. It's a tool specifically fit for your mid to late stage design review that is intended to do that one job and do it extremely well. So best for bringing in multiple disciplines, coordination across models, finding clashes, even ones that your automated clash detection software does not pick up. So your soft clashes and issues that might come up that aren't absolutely apparent with the automated clash detection software. And so there's a few different workflows that we have to work with that. And we work with Revit, Navisworks, and a number of non-Autodesk tools as well as generic 3D file formats. So quick video just to show you the basic overview of what you get with Prospect, kind of a rapid fire situation. So the process of moving a file over is incredibly easy. We have a plugin for both of these tools. You open up your BIM model, click on the plugin, press a couple, maybe one or two more buttons, and then you're generated into VR. Easy and quick to move in. And then you can have an immersive meeting with multiple people inhabiting the same space with native audio so that everybody's looking at the same thing from the perspective of being inside of the design long before you get to construction. And it helps everyone to get on the same page and align while you're working with multiple disciplines and multiple stakeholders. As well, there's a number of different tools in here to help you in this process, make sure we can keep track of anything that maybe is an issue, and we can view these persistently in VR, and they can also be exported out of the system. This is also available for view on desktop. Of course, it's always a better experience in VR. You get that sense of space, you get that wow factor, but you can also bring in people that are either unable or unwilling to get into VR because unfortunately some people still don't like to strap on a headset. So they can
some people I feel still say that it makes them nauseous being in that complete immersive environment, right? Being on a tablet or watching it even through a conference room screen when somebody else is navigating might be an easier barrier of entry to people who maybe aren't necessarily comfortable in that type of environment.
That's 100% true. And one of the other things about it, though, is that the nausea I'm seeing is kind of declining. The rate of nausea is declining because people are the technology is getting better. So the frame rate is what tended to be one of the things that cause a lot of nausea. And as the technology gets better, you still have it here and there, but it really tends to be less common of a thing for people to experience than it used to be.
Like the extreme motion sick people maybe might experience some delay or, that kind of effect, but absolutely. And I just absolutely love the way it creates almost this, like you're saying, integrated conference room style collaboration setting where everybody's looking at the same thing. Everybody's hearing the same audio. I mean, I think that is taking that from an individualistic perspective of being able to coordinate these things in 3D and truly being able to collaborate in that way.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Exactly. Well said. So I'm going to go run through a couple of case studies just to give you some examples from clients that have used this. It can be something as a bit more dry, like this case study that we're going to start off with, but this just kind of shows that Prospect isn't limited just to something like reviewing the design of a building. We actually have a lot of infrastructure projects that are being used in Prospect to check out site conditions. So taking some civil 3D, Navisworks, even near Earth data to get GIS data included in there. We had in this case study, this was a gravel corridor. So verifying the slope, the cut fill limits, and getting an opportunity so people could actually almost visit the site of construction much more easily than actually having to go there, just creating a virtual environment where they're able to join into this. So a bit dry, just to be completely frank, but sometimes that's exactly what we need. Another case study that I think is interesting is we worked with Kane Group over in London for a model on a historic hotel in downtown London. So they had to move all of the mechanical systems from the roof because they were converting it into a penthouse, and they wanted to actually bore out a subterranean level that did not exist to move the mechanical systems down there to make room to put on penthouse hotel rooms.
I see it in the next slide. Are you the slide 8, the Kane Group?
Excuse me, I think I'm sharing my wrong.
Yeah, maybe you're sharing the previous screen. No worries. Yeah. That's why I'm here.
Thank you very much, Dana.
No worries.
Yeah,
no worries.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, Kane Group was having to drill out a subterranean level. In order to do this, they had to do a project that previously was unthinkable, right? So they had to drill out, create a subterranean level, and then lower all the equipment down by a shaft. They trained for this. They gave the crane operators a feel for what the actual conditions would look like under using Prospect. And they also brought in the owners and the engineers to review the project and the various moving parts of this project within Prospect. And the head of the project basically gave us a quote of saying that, you know, this was going to be nearly impossible without the ability to view this in VR and to get a general feel for what everything was going to happen. And also it helped to speed the project along because the owners could understand what they were trying to accomplish much easier by seeing it in VR, because VR gives you the opportunity to, if you're an owner, you're a lay person and you're not an expert in looking at BIM or schematics, then this is something anybody can understand, and it just comes across like that. And let's move forward on the next one. All right, this one, real quick one, just want to show you some of the things that you can actually do. Basically took multiple different data sets, brought them all together, FBX mesh, a mesh of point clouds, GIS data, InfraWorks, all of this together, and we're able to generate an entire 56-acre site where you could see the entire site and you could actually enter into the buildings. So creating a very large facility that was able to be explored, and for some of these like larger mega projects, something a bit stretching of what we were able to do. And Dana, how are we doing on time? Are we?
We are good. We have about 5-10 minutes.
All right. So real quick one, we've seen a lot more of our clients looking at infrastructure projects. And this is a very brief video just showing the process of exporting civil 3D data into FBX, bringing it into Prospect. So then you can get some ideas about or a representation of how a infrastructure project might work in situ. So getting the topography, how this might look for the entire within context of the land, and also giving you the ability to explore that and identify any issues that might come up as well. And again, all of this is going to be online collaborative, so bringing in multiple stakeholders from various parts, from various different entities, so that they can experience this as well. All right, let me get out of here.
And so it seems like various pieces and parts were taken from Prospect in the wild. Can you talk to that a little bit about how those delineations were made, if at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the cases I've shown so far have been extensively Prospect, exclusively Prospect.
You can see it up in the top left corner there.
Yeah, and so Prospect tends to do better with like complex MEP projects, fully federated infrastructure, kind of like getting into the heavy nitty gritty type of projects, where the wild tends to be more of a tool for designers and architects. And in that, it also gives the ability for designers and architects to work on earlier stage stuff, ideate a little bit, present, do some kind of almost pitch meetings, if you will. So they're kind of two different use cases. And so each one has its strengths and weaknesses, but these are definitely two different use cases. All right. Does that answer your question or?
Yep, totally.
Okay. All right. So speaking of which, let's get over to the wild. So just like I was mentioning before, and we can see my screen still?
Yep.
Okay. So bid and proposal meetings, early stage master and space planning, interior layouts. That's kind of the bread and butter of the wild. We're dealing with generally projects that are a little bit smaller in scope, but maybe a bit more aesthetically focused. Generally, that's where the wild is a bit more stronger, aesthetically focused, and also ideation, kind of conceptual, that you can also have a bit of a back and forth with a client. Quick video again to show some of those abilities. We also have this wonderful virtual charrette environment that's available in the wild, where you can bring in 2D assets to support your conversation. So here we're showing some of the ins and outs of a site, presenting some optionality of general design, kind of doing an exploded axiom here. So using all the abilities of the wild to present of multiple different facets when you're getting into the early stage and figuring out exactly what you want from the design. And bringing people in there, including the clients, into an environment that is totally immersive, and you can manipulate, share things, break things apart, kind of break them apart and put them back together, offers a lot of abilities for you to tell a story in a much more robust way. Now, let me bring this up 1 second. And the final one that I do want to show you guys, this is a bit of a longer video, so I'm just gonna kind of show this, and we'll talk over it, do some questions, and finish up here. One of the other things that we see a lot of is that space planning. So you can also bring in 3D assets that are separate from the model that can be manipulated and moved around. And that ability gives people an opportunity to do some floor planning, space planning. We see it a lot in healthcare. Our clients will actually bring in doctors and nurses to check out operating rooms or any sort of facility where they're going to have to do some sort of work. And then they can bring in 3D models of their equipment, move it around, experience the space at scale, and figure out, okay, does this workflow work for us? If it does, great, let's move forward. If it doesn't, let's move this machine 6 inches over, et cetera, replace it with something smaller. See that a lot in healthcare, and we also see it in early stage manufacturing planning. So we have some people that are working with their factories, bringing in 3D models of the equipment that they'd actually be working with, and then doing kind of almost a dry run of how would this workflow go? Would we be able to achieve all our goals within this space with all this equipment? Or is there something that really needs to be moved around a bit? So skip ahead a little bit just to give you guys an idea on this. But that's a kind of quick crash course, and I think we're coming up on time. Did we have any questions that were in the chat or anything along those lines?
It looks like a few of them have been addressed. I guess one that looks like it's one similar to that I had in terms of hardware and how maybe your client is on site with a tablet or what have you on their phone. How do we experience? Would you say it's an equal experience across the board, regardless of hardware, or does that play a factor at all?
With the obvious caveat of you're not going to get the immersive feel of the space with a 2D screen. It just will not happen, right? Mm-hmm. The way that you can in VR. That's the kind of the entire premise, right?
Absolutely.
With Prospect, you have a full functionality of the tools if you're coming in on desktop. With the Wild, it's a view-only mode if you're coming in on desktop. The Wild we have an AR tool. It's a nice extra little feature, but it's nothing that, no one should ever purchase the Wild for our AR tool, right? And the AR tool works on iPads and basically presents itself almost like a portal to this virtual environment where you could even see others as similar to this video, where if somebody else was in VR and you were on site using the AR tool, you could see this other avatar taking these 3D objects, moving them around, and you could have somebody on site with a tablet viewing the manipulation of the model at the same time.
Yeah, it seems like some people in the past have had issues with especially larger scale models and performance.
Yeah, so extremely large models, especially if you're on an untethered Quest, it's problematic, just to be frank.
When just playing in VR, my nieces and nephews and all of that, I got a VR just so that I could, spend time with them. To be honest, they've always got their headsets on. And I know that, your operating system just for standard games really does make a difference. Basic ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So, usually we have people on untethered Quests. That's the majority of our clients for good reason. However, your GPU you're dealing with there is basically a cell phone GPU processor. And there are some limits to how much it can handle, especially with the way our system is set up so that it loads the entire model instead of streaming so that you have a continuous experience and there's no lag with that. So there's a trade-off there. And the way to get around that, especially with Prospect, is if you have a high GPU rig, drafting computer or something like that, cabling in can resolve a lot of those issues. There's still always a limit, and we are looking at taking care of this and making it no longer a problem. And there's going to be some stuff coming out in the near future on that side of things. But they're 100% correct. That does represent a limitation. So cable into a high-end gaming computer or break the model up into chunks.
And last question.
Yeah.
Is it headset specific? Like, I know that they're coming out with the headsets with the backpacks and all of that. Like, so maybe I wouldn't have to tether.
Potentially. I mean, it depends on it. The GPU is the name of the game if you're loading the entire model and not streaming, right? So it depends on the processor. I'm going to assume that Apple's processor is probably going to be significantly higher than the Quest.
But it will work with any of the headsets. I could play inside of the platform with the Quest or the Oculus or whatever.
Yeah, we work with pretty much every headset, every modern headset that's out there, with the exception of the Varjo, just because they're hand tracking and we don't have hand tracking functionality.
Okay, and I think actually the newer, one of the newer ones have the controls have GPUs in them as well, so they're hand tracking, I believe, as well.
Yeah, and people do use the Varjo with outside controllers that map to it, and that can work. But picking up a normal Varjo that is hand tracking based will not work. But yeah, pretty much every other modern headset.
Awesome.